Previously on Popping Collars.
There was no one there to teach Daenerys, how to be queen. She's had to learn that herself the hard way over and over again. She didn't have her Targaryen parents to prepare her for that.
She had a crappy brother to prepare her.
Creepy brother.
Crappy, creepy brother.
Welcome to Popping Collars, the podcast that lives at the intersection between religion and pop culture. I'm your host. My name is Greg Knight. I am in Palm Beach, Florida, and with me are my co-hosts, Betsy Gonzalez from Alexandria, Virginia. Hello, Betsy.
Hey, Greg.
And Liz Easton from Omaha, Nebraska. Hi, Liz.
Hey, Greg. And
our special guest from Long Beach, California, Ricardo Avila. Welcome back to the show, Ricardo.
Thanks, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is episode 39 of the 1,199th ranked podcast in the iTunes spirituality category. And our topic today is pop music. So there have been a couple of big items of pop music news lately. The first was the tragic passing of Prince a couple of weeks ago, and that was almost immediately followed by the release of Beyonce's new album, Lemonade. And both of these things had people talking about the role that pop music plays in people's lives, giving wide cross-sections of society a common soundtrack. So who is a pop music touchstone for you personally, and what would you say makes that band or singer so appealing for lots of people?
I thought of Nirvana.
Oh, interesting.
Which I'm still a little young for, but like that, I think it's interesting that now you see like Nirvana t-shirts. Oh, shut up, Betsy. You see like Nirvana t-shirts being sold at Target, and younger people are sort of rebelling by listening to grunge music from the 90s, which is kind of strange, but there's something totally pop-ish about like Nevermind, right? Like it's very catchy. You can sing along. It's like rock music, kind of slash punk that you can actually sing along to. It was super, kind of dark and plaintive, and then had this story alongside of the people that was compelling and then ultimately tragic. So like my brother's a few years older than me. He would listen to Nirvana, and now you'll hear it on like a classic rock station. So they kind of busted out of like indie rock and became like the standard of pop music.
And it drove the leader of their band crazy as a result. I think that's something that can't be divorced from this, is that it seems like pop music that transcends boundaries has some kind of compelling cult of personality leader that's at the forefront of whatever that music is. Because you could argue that Britney Spears was one of these artists that would maybe be like the pop artist of her time, and there was something about
the Millennium Award at whatever is it, Billboard. There's some award show that's coming up, and she's going to get this kind of Millennium Award that's only been given like previously one other time to Whitney Houston, another cult of personality, in the crucible of fame kind of person.
I mean, Thriller's a great album, and that's great music, but it's Michael Jackson that's compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? At the end of the day. And maybe that's what's happening with Beyonce with Lemonade right now. Obviously she has a message that she wants to say. She's using music to say it. But if it were someone other than Beyonce, would it be as compelling? Would it be as talked about? Would it be in the zeitgeist like it is?
No. That's my one-word contribution to the podcast.
No.
I'm failing miserably.
No.
I don't know a lot about Beyonce. I know that she seems to have a hold on pop culture like nobody else in a way. Like when she drops these new compilations overnight. This is the second time she's done this, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she constantly surprises. She's got a level of artistry that, you can't say, well, that's a crappy album. And I think I don't know, I would argue she has some authenticity. I would say maybe there is some sort of crafting of image with Madonna. But as with Madonna, I think she does have something important she wants to say. And the thing about the moms with the young men and women and boys and girls killed, I think that's And that's not crafting. That's actually using her artistry and her kind of power in the world to bring a message that, you know, kids wouldn't listen to if it were Hillary Clinton necessarily, for instance. But because it's Beyonce, there is more to it. That makes sense?
Sure.
Well, I was just gonna say, I wonder, like, what would have happened if Lemonade was Beyonce's first album?
I don't know if that could be a first album.
I don't think so either. So, like, you wonder if, like, the power that she, I think it's really admirable and respectable that she sort of I don't know if she paid her dues, but she built a following and she built a career on maybe slightly lighter fare. And then when she was ready, she just, like, dropped a bomb. That was, like, super powerful and culturally, I think, really current and important and smart.
My thought is, I was just thinking back to, like, the big celebrity concert thing that was kind of in 80s, late 70s, 80s. I think probably the concert for Bangladesh organized by George Harrison might have been the first, like, get everybody together for this cause, right? And then it was We Are the World, and it's Ethiopia. And then it's Live Aid, and it's all of these artists that we've just talked about from the 80s participating in that. And that element of, well, people are listening to us. Why don't we band together and use all of this clout for good to raise awareness around particular issues? And I think we all know bands who have done that and done it well. I mean, Arcade Fire does it for Haiti. Every ticket they sell, money goes to Haiti. They play shows down there. They're big partners in health folks. U2 has done it for a variety of causes. I remember as a kid, I knew, because of the music I listened to, I knew who Greenpeace was. I knew who Amnesty International was. Like, all of those folks who had latched into these larger social organizations to say, you know what, you like my music? Actually, you know what I also care about is how we're going to build a better kingdom of God. And that's some of their background for some of them here and now. I mean, the amount of charity that Prince did as a Jehovah's Witness that just nobody knew about, completely under wraps. You know, so from public to private, living out your clout and using it in a way that's effective.
But also, like, this idea of backlash to messages also, because I was thinking about Beyonce and the backlash that she got back from the Super Bowl performance this last year from maybe more conservative camps, who knows, but certainly people that thought that she had gone too far in presenting messages and were saying things like, look, you're just a pop artist, right? Just do pop music. Just sing your silly songs, right? Like like Liz was saying earlier, the lighter fare, right? Sing Crazy in Love, you know, something like it. Sing something that's safe, because this boundary pushing is making me uncomfortable because I have you slotted in my head as pop artist. And that means that you shouldn't necessarily be saying anything meaningful. You should be singing stuff that's just entertaining earworm fare. I feel like that was some of the backlash.
Well, it's in the same way it's like, you know, parishioners who think it's tacky to talk about politics in the pulpit. You know, don't do that. You know, you're my priest. You talk about God stuff. Don't start talking about how that's actually supposed to affect my life outside of this place, the relationships I have and how I make my money and who I vote for. You know, don't start busting down genres and walls in that kind of way in my life. No. Church stays in these walls. It doesn't go outside, and it's tacky-falacky if you start talking about it from the pulpit.
But, like, I wonder if there's something about, like, being a pop icon that you kind of know what people want. And so your artistry is, how do I say what I want to say and yet still produce things that I know that people want? Because I think that it would be the natural move of an artist to want to grow, to want to change, to want to evolve. But I never got the sense that Michael Jackson, for instance, didn't want to produce a hit song. He showed growth over the course of his career, but he still wanted to make a hit song. Not necessarily his song all the time, but he wanted his songs to be number ones.
I think that when you have this conversation, you can think of pop artists as like independent agents practically, and forget the fact that there's this whole machine around them that is making decisions from A to Z. And I think that when you see some artists who break into that more authentic place, it's because they have more creative control and just more direction of their career rather than just being handled all the time.
Yeah, there's a reason why we know who Quincy Jones is.
Right.
I'm an old man. Oh, pop culture is no longer.
You know who
has left
Quincy
me
Jones
behind.
is.
Of course I do. That's a long time ago. I was thinking about Prince and how the thing for me about Prince, and this wasn't huge because I'm with you, Liz. I loved Prince at a time and a place, but after a while, it's like 39 albums. You know, probably half of those were like, okay, I don't need to hear that again. Sorry, Prince. But the big thing, the heady thing for me is Purple Rain came out in 1984, and that's the year I graduated high school. And that's, you know, I was all freaking closeted and freaked out. And so here's this guy singing about, like, not just on Purple Rain, about sex. And can I say these things on this show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Head and, you know, jack you off and all this stuff, right? And I was closeted, but we were dancing to it. And it was like, sex was being talked about in this it was kind of scandalous, but it was out there, you know, at the bar where we went dancing, and it was out there on the radio. Well, not all the songs, right? But it was a way for me to kind of hear that sex was good and okay in this funny place. And the way that he mixed religion, that caught me too, because I was a pretty religious boy growing up. I didn't go to church in college, but I did growing up a lot. And it just tripped my trigger to hear him. Since he died, I realized, you know, the song Darling Nikki on Purple Rain. I don't need to repeat the lyric, I guess. But so the song is like, I guess I will. I met her in a hotel lobby masturbating with a magazine. So I'm like 17 years old and I hear this like, oh my God, that's amazing. Masturbation. They talk about masturbation. Anyway, so recently you find out that at the end of the song, do you know this about the end of the song, the backwards message? So the backwards message at the end of this song about like masturbation and like, you know, chains and whips or whatever, it's like, hello, how are you? I'm fine because I know that the Lord is coming soon. At the end of that same song. And just like he did that. And to me, that was great. I mean, those things echo against each other for some people like me who had religion and sex and didn't know how to reconcile them. And here's someone just being kind of out there with it. Now, the backwards message was forward in other songs, you know, so you knew that he was talking about God and adore. So, you know, you'll have songs next to each other, you know, Cream followed by Adore. Is that okay to say?
What's interesting about Prince and about David Bowie this year and like all of the public grieving is how they were two men who were pretty sexy and were showing this different way of being masculine, just like writ large all over popular culture. And I kind of love that. It was so unchallenging and unchallenged. It was certainly challenged, but the fact that, like you said, Ricardo, like those albums got out there, they were you could pick them up in your town record store. It wasn't just like a, you know, club thing or a city thing. But I wonder if that was something particular to the 70s and 80s. Like, is anyone really doing that anymore? Have we become, even as our culture struggles with, and maybe tries to embrace different gender identities, our pop cultures are pretty straight. Or, like, they're pretty binary, let's say that, right? I mean, is there anybody who's really playing with, even Madonna did.
Well, it's not as transgressive anymore.
Right. Janet Jackson did.
Yeah, I was thinking of the word subversive a little bit, and like, you know, how popular music can be subversive. I thought that like your example of Darling Nikki is amazing, Ricardo, right? Because so, you know, when Tipper Gore and the Parents Council was coming down on lyrics and stuff like that, they were looking for like subversive messages in songs that were like, oh, okay, like go worship Satan and blah blah blah, and, you know, like all of this stuff, right? When Prince is using subversive messages to say like, You're okay. God loves you. Like, Jesus is coming. Whatever. You know, like what that council anyway would deem a wholesome message. That's the subversive message in something like Darling Nikki. It just makes me wonder. Like, I mean, we've talked about on our show before how sometimes we're called to be tricksters a little bit. We're called to be mischief makers. We're called to kind of get messages in to our world that maybe we would be uncomfortable saying overtly, but maybe we can sort of find soft ways to weave in messages of hope, messages of love, messages of transcendence, in a way that people will maybe listen.
What I also find is that with many of these people who we seem to be gravitating to in this conversation, they are people who speak openly about their spirituality and their sexuality. Like, they see their sexuality as attached to their spiritual life and as a gift from God. And I would think about Beyonce would probably have that viewpoint. Prince definitely had that viewpoint.
Bono.
I think about Bono. Oh, totes. I was about to say, see, I held back all this time mentioning you too. Let's just recognize. And yes, that Bono, I mean, all of the, she moves in mysterious ways. Is it about a belly dancer? Is it about the spirit? Who knows, right? It's both. I find that makes it even more potent, attractive, slightly dangerous, with the fact that they are so in touch with who they are as sexual beings created by God. I don't know who does that game really well. That's a hard game to do well.
Right, especially in ways that aren't just typically straight.
That are not just sex, right?
Right.
And so how do you do it with that spiritual edge to it?
It sounds like what I'm hearing anyway is that it's a bit like pop music is about connection, either physical connection or spiritual connection or emotional connection. It's like it's just about connecting, and maybe that's what it is that's appealing to us. Like this idea of just hearing songs about physical intimacy, about spiritual intimacy, about emotional intimacy, all kind of bundled into a safe kind of bubbly package. Like it allows us to say, yeah, I like these things, with a happy kind of beat to it.
Well, that was a quote that a bunch of people kept putting up on Facebook, right? After Prince died, it was, people pontificating about Prince the person. And kind of in reaction, people said, well, their music didn't necessarily show you something about them all the time. It showed you things about you. That it was the self-revelation that you're having in your connection to the music.
I posted that.
I know you did.
All right. It's not mine. It's not original to me.
No, but that sounds like exactly what you were talking about, being
right. They're telling more about yourself.
School.
Yeah, no, right. That they say the thing that you didn't know you needed to hear, and when you hear it, it shows you yourself to you.
And it feels kind of like a secret message, right? Like it's not like you and your friends were sitting around talking about like, man, get a load of what Prince was saying, or maybe you were, but
maybe
I don't think so. I think that especially for adolescents, there's that moment. For me, it was this totally dates me. For me, it would have been like Alanis Morissette, like this kind of angry, sexual woman expressing a kind of sexuality that was for me like in middle school and high school, like in my bedroom listening to it through headphones, being like, God, like this is amazing. I never would have talked to my girlfriends about that. I would have never talked to anyone about it. It was this totally like secret message being conveyed just to me.
Wow.
That makes sense to me. Like a middle school girl, a middle school Liz, listening to Alanis Morissette. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh no, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about this.
Well, I was just thinking how people react to Kanye sometimes. And I think it's because Kanye is saying something that's very true for him and probably true for a lot of people that feel like Kanye West does. And yet for a lot of folks, and I'll just say like white folks, he comes off as what? Like, you would use the word thuggish, right? The code word of thug or something like that to describe like who he is personally. If you are tapped into what it is that he's saying, he's a total genius, right? When it comes to his music and his lyrics and his sexuality, right? I mean, I think that that's got to be a part of it. Like if you're threatened by black male sexuality, you're threatened by the music of Kanye West. The music industry, and we've talked about how it divides things into genres. And it's like, okay, you go over here and you go over there and you go over there. And it kind of works to keep us separated as much as possible. But a good song that connects people is going to hopefully transcend those boundaries that we kind of put up for ourselves. And I think there's a lesson there for us.
Right. Right, it's a level of authenticity in music. I hadn't thought about it until you said it, Ricardo, about Prince and sort of your experience coming of age, that we're all these unique beings created in God's image, and there are different facets of that, and different stuff turns us on, and whatever. And when that's expressed in pop music, it's right out there front and center, and we don't talk about it too much. We dance to it, and maybe we listen to it really loud in the car with our friends, but we don't actually talk about it. But we're all receiving that message.
Right. But it makes somebody feel not alone.
I think it makes everybody feel not alone.
But Katy Perry singing "I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It"
That doesn't
to
feel
an upbeat tune. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think that's.
It doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I totally thought when I heard that song she was going to be a one-hit wonder, I have to say.
Me too.
I really did. But nope.
What's up, Ricardo?
I love Firework. I do. I
do too.
Video. I preached about it. People cried during the frickin' sermon. Ugh. Firework. Okay, wait. So I do have something to say. Liz, what you were saying, and I think I lost it, but it totally sounded like a religious experience that you were describing, to me anyway. You were talking about there's a message, and it finds you, and it hits everyone deeply, and you don't talk about it comfortably with your friends, but it's got an authenticity. It's funny. It is almost like a little bit of a religious experience for people who may not have religion. You know, religion doesn't speak to them, but they hear a song that really moves them and says something about them that is true, and they rise to it.
Well, we also all hear what we want to hear or what we can hear. Like, I mean, we've probably all had that experience preaching, right? Where people come up to you afterwards and are like, when you said this thing, it really spoke to me. And you're like, I don't think I said that. Or, you know, then the next person is like, oh, it was really meaningful that your sermon was about X and Y. And you're like, it really wasn't. But there's something about like when we're all assembled and consuming the same thing and experiencing the same thing that we hear it differently. And I think that that's a function of the Holy Spirit. Like, we have ears to hear. That's like a Pentecost thing, right? Like, we have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying, and we hear it differently.
It's like those moments in ministry in church or when you're writing a sermon and you realize you're trying to hit everybody. Like, you're trying to say, oh, do I have this group in there? Is this group in there? Is this, and then you realize that actually the clarity of you as an individual giving the sermon has been lost. That you've lost it, right? And that when we try to be everything to everybody, you know, Beyonce, I don't think she's at this point where she's sitting down and saying, I'm going to be everything to everybody. No, she is a clarity of her message. And I think that's what's so amazing is just seeing her clarity. And it makes me want to say, you know what? I'm not going to get so bogged down all the time. And is everybody feeling included all the time in my sermon? Am I challenging? Am I pushing? Am I feeling like I'm delivering where the Spirit is speaking to me as an individual and who I think it's speaking to us as a community? Am I doing that? Or am I kid-gloving everything? You know, am I trying to have a hit song every sermon? Or am I actually going to have clarity of my message that I feel I'm called to deliver?
There's a moment of, I think, maturity. There's a turning moment in most priests' lives where for the first time ever, the sermon that you preach is not better than the last sermon that you preached. Like, you're hitting home runs every time because you're new, and like maybe they're not home runs, but they are for you. And all of a sudden, you're not besting yourself with every sermon. And I think that that's like this really sweet spot as a preacher where you start then exploring that authenticity. Like, you can't count on the thrill of being like, oh man, I did it again, or I did it better than I did last time. You're going to have some bombs. And then you start realizing that there's a voice that you need to find and preach from. And I think we all were taught to preach primarily by the same preachers who were pretty grounded in like the New Homiletic, which is mainly narrative and has lots of room for people to make connections for themselves. And that's kind of still where I come from as a preacher. And I think that that's kind of where pop music comes from too, and in the best way. I mean that in the best way.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Preaching from yourself. Yeah, preaching
from yourself and there being kind of a narrative where the connections are tenuous and the listener is filling in a lot of the blanks themselves. You hear things that you might not hear at another time in your life. And, you know, I'll listen to songs now that I maybe listened to when I was younger and realize like, oh my gosh, there's this whole other meaning that's either like really dirty or really beautiful or whatever it was that like I totally didn't get the first time that I listened to it, but I still loved it. And I think that when we try to force the connections and force the meaning, we sort of disrespect the audience or the listener.
Wow. That's how I preach, and I didn't know I was doing something like a thing.
How many times you lived in pain? How many scars between your veins? Where were you when this was being real? How many times you missed the train? How many songs you never heard? Where were you when this was being real? I'm here to tell you this won't last forever. The pain on you will ease if you surrender. Whenever you hear my voice, whenever you feel my love, you can feel the music. Let the music live in you. You can feel the music. Let the music live in you. How many stars upon the sky?
So it's time for our 5-minute coffee hour. Before we get to that, let's do some plugs. And it's been a while since we've plugged our own sites. So we'll start with our guests, but then we'll also plug our host sites too. So Ricardo, where are you? What are you doing? And how can people get in touch with you?
I was recently promoted from associate rector to interim rector at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in lovely Long Beach, California. I have an extinct blog that you can still find. No, not really. Entertainingangels.something at WordPress.
Liz, where are you? What are you doing? How can people get in touch with you?
I am the canon to the ordinary in the Diocese of Nebraska, and you can find me on Instagram. You guys know I love the Instagram, and you can find me there at Liz East.
Betsy, where are you? What are you doing? How can people get in touch with you?
Oh, Greg, I'm almost at the end of the school year, my friend.
Almost.
Oh, so close. Anybody in the school chaplain world knows that the school year, it is a running with the bulls for the months that you do it, and then the summertime comes, and then you get to be on all the social media you want. So I'm on Twitter, Betsy_Gons, which I think reveals my age that I actually used an underscore. And I think, doesn't it? That sounds very AOL. Hopefully I'm going to be doing a little more tweeting there. But I serve as a chaplain at the Episcopal High School here in Alexandria, Virginia.
Fantastic. My name is Greg, and I'm the Director of Children and Youth Ministries at Bethesda by the Sea Episcopal Church in Palm Beach, Florida. You can find us at bbts.org, and you can find me on Twitter at @ThatGregKnights. So our 5-minute coffee hour, Betsy, you had something. You had a book club with Betsy.
Book club. We talk a bunch about things that move around, like television shows and movies and moving pictures.
The Nickelodeon machines that the kids are using.
Even though I know there's a screenplay in the works for these books, yeah. But it's Justin Cronin, and he is a former, I think now he gets to be a former college professor because he's now super successful. He was at Rice. And he wrote a book, I want to say it was right around the year I graduated from seminary, so 2010, called The Passage. And I remember I took the passage with me to Honduras to do my 5-week Spanish language immersion, because who can go be ordained Reverend Gonzalez with knowing no Spanish? So I went to go do this, and so I'm in this house with the host family, and I speak nothing, yet I am in the home with this tome of a book that I've traveled, this brick, hardcover book. And so I would just sit in my room until I finally felt comfortable to A, meet some other people who spoke English who were at school with me, and B, know some Spanish to be able to talk to other people. But I devoured this first book. Wonderful characters, great mixture of theology and just all sorts of things going on in it, and mysticism, just amazing. And then the second book, The 12, came out a couple of years later, and now we are on the cusp of the third book, City of Mirrors, is going to be coming out. I believe I pre-ordered it months ago. I think it's May 24th or something. It's supposed to be coming out.
Now, what is this? Is this like a YA novel? Is this like a sci-fi? What is it?
It's an apocalyptic sort of vampire novel about survival and community and something supernatural or divine coming down and salvation. Period.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, though. It's a beautiful book. It's beautifully written. I loved the first half, which is sort of like pre-apocalypse, a lot more than I like the second half.
Right.
I highly recommend it.
You're reading a Stephen King
I'm
book?
reading that Stephen King book about time traveling, which is now also a Hulu show.
What Hulu show? Oh, yeah.
With James Franco.
1963?
Yeah, it's 11/22/63. And it's really good. I bought it at the grocery store because I hurt my knee and I couldn't walk around and I didn't want to just watch TV. So I was like, I'm going to read this really long book. And it's great. You know, it's typical Stephen King, like great storytelling, not super literary, I should say. He's obviously very literate.
not
You
really
read books.
intelligible
You're a
in
priest
any
and
way.
you
I'm
read
a
books.
priest and I read books.
And I am a fan of audiobooks because I cannot sit down and read. I can't sit still anymore. I either fall asleep or I'm too busy, but I'm driving around enough, I guess Southern California. And, God, that Stephen King book is awesome. It's just wonderful. It's not super horror kind of book. It's a great story. And it really does make you think about like time travel and longing, nostalgia, wishing you could live in another time. It's great. And the passage is good too. So speaking of audiobooks, I just finished listening to the audiobook. It's called The Luckiest Girl Alive by a woman named Jessica Knoll. I must have heard about it in EW because that's where I get all my news.
That's right. That's our official news carrier of this podcast.
That would be Entertainment Weekly for the
Yeah,
uninitiated.
come on.
Please.
Not
So-
Episcopal Weekly? No.
It's really good. And Jessica Knoll was interviewed in the New York Times a couple months ago, and I've saved that article until I finish the audiobook. So that's good. It's a good book.
You can find us on Twitter at Poppin' Collars. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Poppin' Collars. You can find us on our website, poppincollarspodcast.com, where you can download each and every single one of our shows. You can also find us on your favorite podcasting app, be it iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, any of those. If you do find us there, we just ask that you subscribe, rate and review our show. That'll help move us past that goal of top 1,000 podcasts in the spirituality category. It can't be that hard. Like, I'm looking at the people ahead of us. Like, they've got nothing on our show. Come on, we can do it.
Hey, this show is a sleeping
Do your
giant,
part.
man. It's going to be Sweet.
Do your part. Finally, we are featured each and every time on EpiscopalCafe.com. We love EpiscopalCafe.com. We know you will as well. Check them out for all your Episcopal news and beyond. And so, with that is Poppin' Collars for this time. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Betsy, for coming on the show.
You guys are great.
We'll see you next time.
Keep those collars popped.